Genesis chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. In the prior verse, we saw that the Lord God was walking in the cool of the evening in the garden. Adam and Eve hear that. They run away and hide from him. Now we're going to see the initial part of their conversation. Ke ekalisen kyrios hatheos tan Adam, kai apen auto, Adam pu'e, kai apen auto, tain phonensu ekusa, peripatuntas, into paradeso, Ke ephobethane, hati gumnas emi, kai ekrubein. Well, we begin with the Lord's side of the equation, and we have ekalisen here. This is a third singular aorist active indicative from kaleo. And so someone here called out, and it's kyrios hatheos, Yahweh Elohim in the Hebrew. So the Lord God called out, and to whom does he call? He calls out just Adam, which, hold that thought. Quite interesting that he is addressing him personally. It's no longer just the man, but it's actually his name, Adam. And what does he say? Kai apen, he said to him, Adam, pu'e. So that is, where are you? And it's a nice translation of the Hebrew. Now, one minor point to note is that actually Adam there, the second one at least, is not in the Masoretic text, and so it gets dropped out in some of the Septuagint manuscripts. Not really sure why it would have crept in, perhaps for clarification or something like that. The Hebrew just says, where are you? It doesn't have that second Adam, but the basic sense is still the same. And Adam now responds, apen, he said to him. Notice the parallelism in the phrasing here in the narrative. And what does Adam say? Well, let's start with the verb here, ekusa. This is a first singular aorist active indicative. You see the lengthening on the front end, the SA ending. I heard, and what did he hear? Tain phonane. I heard the sound or the voice. And whose voice is it? Your. Notice the genitive form of the first person pronoun. So I heard your sound or your voice. And then we have peripatuntas. We've seen that previously in Genesis 3:8. This is from peripateo. And you have the participle morpheme, the third declension, genitive singular ending. And it's genitive because the you here is genitive. So it's sort of piggybacking off of that. So I heard your sound while walking or something along those lines, or while you were walking. This is also absent in the Masoretic text. And perhaps, again, it's clarifying and tying back to that prior verse in 3:8, perhaps, would be my guess. So he hears him walking into paradiso. So I heard your sound while you were walking in the garden, and here was Adam's response. Here's where his heart is. Ephobethane. This is from phobeomai, or some lexicons list it with the omega as opposed to the omai. There's some debate about whether it's a default middle. And you will see an epsilon on the front end and a thane ending. So this morphologically is a first singular aorist passive indicative. Now, because it's passive morphologically, or the spelling, you might be tempted to think that it was something like, I was made afraid. But with phobeomai, and we actually saw this last go around, though it takes the theta is kind of encroaching on the middle territory. So generally speaking, we would just translate that, I was afraid, or I feared, or something like that. Now, why is he afraid? Because I am naked. We saw that in a prior video as well. He had realized that nakedness and the shame had entered in. And then he replies how I hid. This is once again from crypto. We saw that in the prior video. And similarly to last time, you see the Adenu ending just like over here. It's once again a first singular aorist passive indicative. You also have the epsilon on the front end. So morphologically, once again, just like this verb, it is morphologically passive, but it's still going to be basically middle in meaning, I hid. What I find interesting about this is actually a lot of different things. First off, you'll notice that Adam's response to God is one of fear, phobeomai. And we'll see that over and over again in the Old Testament as at least described often as a good response to God. But in this case, there's a negative way in which it could be understood. There's a positive fearing of the presence of the Lord, but in this case, it's a shameful, run and hide kind of fear. It's not the good, healthy, reverential fear that we are supposed to have. We also can see, in a certain sense, an anticipation of where the Bible is going to go with all this. When you read Revelation 21 and 22, what you find is, once again, the presence of the Lord God among his people in a renewed and transformed creation that has Eden-like properties. We've already looked at that in prior videos. But instead of this response of bad fear and hiding, we stand in his presence and he's our God forever. So this response of Adam does get reversed in due course. It's just going to take a long time. Final thing I'll mention, when you read Paul's account of the sin and transgression entering into humanity in Romans 5, and it's really throughout Romans 5, but just looking at verses 14 and 17, one of the key principles is that he very clearly says that Adam is the one who bears the responsibility. Death reigned from Adam, or it's the transgression of Adam. In future videos, we'll look at how Eve is involved and how Paul nuances some of that stuff out with Eve as well and how Satan was deceiving her. But the blame is placed squarely on the shoulders of Adam by Paul. It's one man's trespass. He doesn't talk about the man and the woman. Now, why is that? My sense is, and general commentators would agree with this, that he's drawing on the fact that in the Genesis account, though Adam and Eve ate of the fruit, when God tries to find them, he seeks Adam. He takes him as the responsible head of that family unit and says, okay, you're the one that I'm going to hold accountable. As we'll see, Adam's going to blame shift to Eve. She's going to blame shift to the serpent. It's all going to fall apart, but God holds Adam responsible. And Paul very clearly draws deeply on the Genesis narrative in Romans to recognize that and say that original sin comes through Adam and then leads to death and so forth. So a lot of interesting stuff going on in these two verses.